What is going on, world? Welcome to the first live stream by the Football Physios, where I am here to give you all of the updates in the world of soccer, in the world of fitness, in the world of rehab, and in the world, of course, of injuries. If you are new here, my name is Andy. I'm a physical therapist. I am from New Jersey, and I specialize in helping soccer players return to their physical best, both after injury or if you're just getting back into the swing of things. So, in this live stream today, we're going to talk about a lot. We're going to talk about Sam Kerr and her ACL injury and how it's impacting the women's game overall with the recent rise of injuries of that kind in that game. We are going to talk about Cancelo and his knee injury and how it's going to impact FC Barcelona and them moving forward. We are going to start the show off by talking first about Neymar because his injury and his recovery thus far has been a really hot topic in the world of physio, in the world of sport, and in the world of soccer in general. Most of you have probably seen some videos so far, but we are going to talk about all of that on today's show. So thank you guys for joining in today. Make sure you like this video, make sure you share it with a friend, and make sure you send me your questions. Put them in the comments below, put it in the chat, because at the end of today's video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer all the questions I've gotten during the stream. I already have one really good question by one of my friends who's out in Manhattan right now. So hopefully at the end of the stream, we have a few more that I can share with you guys. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the show here. And as someone who is working in a daily basis in the game of soccer at a pretty decently high level, one of the things I'm learning is in elite sport, there is so much that the general public does not know about each individual injury, or take injuries out of the equation in general. There's so much that is not shared with the general public. And when it comes to health, safety, injury, fitness, for good reason, because this is, deeply personal information. What we're going to do on this show moving forward is we're only really going to talk about the stuff that is presented publicly to the media, to us, the fans, so we can then go ahead and analyze it. And I start that with Neymar's injury today because I really want to look at it through the frame of exactly what information was presented to us, the public, the fans, people who frankly aren't in the complete know about his rehab. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read the information to you. We're going to go over the information together, and then I'll give my take on it. I will give you my spin on it. I will give you something that maybe is clear and obvious to a physio, but not necessarily the general public. So without further ado, let's go ahead and read exactly what was written in Neymar's most recent update that he gave to the media. Let me go ahead and share that with you guys here. Tab. Sorry for the delay. Let me just go ahead and share this. Boom. And copy link. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's review all of this information together. This is coming from CNN Sports, pretty reputable source, and it's coming out of Brazil. Let's see exactly what happened during Neymar's injury. And this article is written October 19th, so about 3 months ago. Brazilian superstar Neymar is set to have surgery after tearing both his ACL and his meniscus in his left knee, his club Al Hilal have confirmed. The 31-year-old suffered the injury during Brazil's 2-0 defeat against Uruguay on Tuesday, and again, that was back in October. After battling with Uruguay's Nicolas for the ball, Neymar collapsed to the ground, clutching his knee just before halftime. He received medical attention several minutes before being stretchered off the field. The medical test Neymar underwent confirmed the ACL and meniscus tear injury in his knee. He will be going through surgery and then a treatment program that will be determined later. Return stronger Neymar. The club did not say how long Brazilian is expected to be sidelined for, but ACL injuries usually keep players in recovery for several months, meaning his participation in a Copa America in June is under threat. So what does all of that really mean? Well, there's quite a good amount here that we can digest, and I think the first place to really start is to go ahead and look at exactly what the injury was. And in this case, the injury was actually two things. It was his ACL and it was also his meniscus. And these two things can happen separately, but in this case, they happen together, which, to be frankly honest, is relatively common. Um, a lot of the times, what happens during an ACL tear is something called a mechanism of injury. Whether the knee buckles backwards, whether the knee twists, whether the knee rotates, that can all put the ACL under strain. And eventually, if the strain is too much for that tissue to tolerate, what will happen is the tissue will fail. Well, there's also other tissues around as well, such as the meniscus. And what I'm going to do for you guys here right now is I'm going to go ahead and share with you guys exactly what the anatomy looks like of the knee. So that way, what we can do is review it all together and we can really dissect exactly what's going on. So this here is the knee. Oh, sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here. First stream, what can you say, right? That's why we're doing this. Ah, perfect. Got a great image for you here. Great image. Okay. Okay, so ACL here. So the ACL is a ligament. It starts in the front of your knee. And what it does is it starts in the front, runs through the middle, and attaches on the back of your knee. The meniscus is a structure that sits right here in the middle of those two. And it allows for a lot of good cushioning between the thigh bone and the shin bone. So what happens is if there's some sort of twisting, rotating mechanism, you can see that these two kind of white big pieces of cartilage here, if that twists a lot, not only is it going to impact the ACL that runs through the middle, but you also have your meniscus on the left and right as well. And in this case, what happened is Neymar actually injured both of these structures, and both of them required surgical repair, which is why, and this is what you won't see in the report, but this is why his rehab would actually be longer than if he just tore his ACL alone. Now, why? What happens is the ACL, after it's repaired, the term repair is maybe a little bit mistaken because most people, when they think of repair, they say, okay, ACL tear, we have the two ends, we're going to repair them by putting them together. Now, what actually happens during an ACL reconstruction is the two ends of the ACL are most often completely removed and a new ACL is put in its place, whether that be from the knee, from the quad, from the hamstring, from a cadaver. A new one is put in place, and that ACL is going to be your new one. That's why they call it ACL reconstruction. Now, the problem with this is when you have that combined with an meniscus tear, you're going to have to go ahead and take the meniscus and stitch it back together. And when that happens, you have to give that time to heal. Because remember, if you have a new ACL, it's brand new from start to finish, from top to bottom. When you repair a meniscus, you're taking the pieces that are, torn from the injury and you're stitching them together. Well, just like a scar on your hand, if you keep on stretching the scar over and over again, it's going to keep on opening and opening and opening. It's the same thing with the meniscus. If you repair the meniscus and you keep on moving these thigh bones up, down, left, right, rotating left, right, that meniscus is going to open right back up and the surgery, the repair will fail. So, what has to happen for this to repair successfully? Well, you have to keep your knee straight and you're not allowed to move your leg for an extended period of time. Usually it's around 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes, depending on the direction of the tear, it can be a little bit less. But more often than not, you're going to be stuck with your knee in complete extension, with your knee being completely straight, for around a month. And during that month, the quad muscle, the muscles of the leg, are getting weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. So conversely, to get that strength back, it's going to take more and more and more time, which is why for most ACL repairs, it's going to take you about 9 months. If you have a meniscus with it, you're probably looking at around 10 to 12, with 12 being the more realistic expectation. Um, that being said, every surgery is different, every protocol is different, every injury is different, every rehab is different, every physio is different, every fitness coach is different. It's all different, it's all situational. So you can't really say, 9 months definite, 12 months definite, 10 months definite, because we don't know. Again, we're not in the know. What we're here to do is educate you guys on exactly how everything is going. But what caught everybody's eye, what caught absolutely everybody's eye, was what was happening in his rehab process. And this was relatively short. I don't know the exact time frame of when this was happening, but this was pretty recently after his surgical procedure that this was happening in his rehab, and it caught everybody's attention. So what we're going to do is we're going to play exactly what was happening during his rehab procedure, and I'm going to break it down and give you my analysis on what I think is possibly going on. Okay, so let's actually pause here. Let's go back to this piece here. So when anybody has a ACL injury or any injury in general, one of the first things you want to do in rehabilitation is start to get your range of motion back, meaning we want to make sure we can get our knee completely straight, and we want to make sure that we can bend the knee as well. And in this clip, you can see here, you can even see actually his left leg is actually decently smaller than his right already. That's called AMI. Maybe we'll cover that in another video. But you can see here, the therapist here is helping him bend his knee. And throughout the rehab process, there's different ranges of motion that you can and should bend your knee to. Typically, if it is a meniscal injury as well, that bending is going to be a lot more conservative because, again, those pieces were sewn back together. And if you keep on moving those pieces up, down, left, right, just like a cut on your hand, it's going to reopen and it's not going to allow for the meniscus to fully heal. But again, it's always important to remember, this is important. Every surgery is different. Every rehab protocol is different, depending on the direction of the tear, depending on the surgeon, depending on the physio. Those, kind of timelines of no bending for 4 weeks, no bending for 6 weeks, no bending for 2 weeks. It's completely situational. So you can see here, he's getting a decent amount of bending here. I haven't seen a knee bend after a meniscus repair this deeply, this quickly. But you can see in this next clip. So now what they're doing is they're working on getting his knee bending, his knee range of motion back in a somewhat different position. And based off the sound, it doesn't sound like it's too comfortable. And that's just the reality of it. Again, I'm not exactly sure what his protocols are, what his processes are from the knees that I've worked on that have ACL meniscus or ACL or just meniscus. It hasn't been this painful for my clients to, just based off of what Neymar is. It sounds like he's crying. It just doesn't seem very pleasant. Yeah, so he's having a tough time there. And one of the things we will never do on this channel is we will never talk poorly of another healthcare provider. We're going to keep things objective. We're going to keep things within the objective information that we have. And in this case, we don't have very much. So, I mean, I'm not going to comment on what's actually happening in terms of treatment. But what I can kind of share with you guys is some different ways to get this knee flexion, this knee range of motion back that doesn't have to necessarily be as painful as what we kind of see what's going on here. So you can see here, Neymar is actually in a prone position, meaning his hips are down, he's face down on a table, and they're bending his knee backwards with his heel going towards his butt. Um, in my opinion, this isn't the most comfortable position to get knee range of motion back after ACL for a few reasons. One, because the hip is completely extended and you're not necessarily just moving the joint here. And when it's early on in surgical rehab, you want to keep things as simple as you can by moving only the joints that you necessarily need to. So what you guys are going to see here is a position that I like to have pretty common with my patients after ACL repair. And you can see here, this is a pretty relaxed, pretty comfortable position where somebody is able to help their knee up and down, allow it to bend to their free will, and you're getting good flexion out of it. I bet if someone after a procedure like an ACL meniscus were to do this type of knee range of motion, it would probably be less painful on the knee joint compared to being face down with your heel going towards your butt. Another way that I really like to use with my patients is more of a wall slide, which is what you'll see here. And what this does is, oh, wow, who is that? You know, that's a good looking model in this video. I'm just saying, I don't know who that is, but that's a good looking model. What you're going to see here is you're going to see how gravity can also help you as well. So in this case, if you take your leg and you simply put it up on the wall here. So in this case, the right leg is going to be the injured one, and the left leg is the supporting one. You can just simply do a wall slide similar to this, and that'll give you a very, very similar effect to what you'll get if you're, on your stomach, bringing your heel to your butt, but not necessarily getting as much pain out of it. Why? Because everything is much more relaxed. You're allowing gravity to help you. You're allowing the patient to support themselves with their other leg. And I've done this several times, and it's worked out well. Every single time it's worked out well. And when you allow patients to have control over their body and you allow them to control exactly what's going on in terms of range of motion, their pain levels go down because they're more comfortable, and everybody wins at the end of the day. And that's the whole goal of every single surgical procedure, is to allow the athlete to return to their best and fullest ability. So that was a lot. Let's go ahead and move over to our next knee injury. Cancelo. Barcelona's right back, left back, former Manchester City, former Bayern Munich. He injured his MCL. And your MCL is a part of your knee that allows the thigh bone and the shin bone to stay together, just like the ACL. But instead of being on the inside of your knee, meaning the deepest part of it, it's on the inner portion of the knee. So let me show you what I mean by that. If you look at the inside of the knee here, let's get a really good picture. Oh, this is a great one. This is a great one. So I really like this picture because it shows us the ACL as well as the MCL. So if you look at, we have 1, 2, 3 kind of diagrams here. Let's look all the way on the left. You'll see right in the middle of that knee, you see that big red piece of tissue. Yeah, that's actually the ACL. And if you look to the right of that, you'll see that piece of tissue in red that's going up and down. That is actually your MCL. And what that does is it prevents your knee from collapsing inward. And if you have a pretty significant injury to the structure, what's going to happen is, if you look at the two diagrams to the right of that, those fibers will actually tear, and it's going to allow the knee to move a little bit more than it's supposed to. Now, one of the great things about the MCL is, because the MCL is outside of the knee, because again, the ACL is that one all the way on the inside. The MCL is on the outside. It has a really good blood supply. It has a lot of arteries, it has a lot of veins, it has a lot of ways to get really good nutrients to that tissue. And what that allows the MCL to do is heal mostly on its own. Versus the ACL, you have to have a surgical procedure in order to get it fixed. But the MCL, it's going to be an injury for Cancelo that is going to be dependent on how bad that tear actually is and how bad his symptoms actually are. I've actually had an MCL injury myself. It was relatively minor. It was what we call a grade 1, where it took me about 2 to 3 weeks, and I was feeling just as good as before the injury. Um, MCL injuries can be anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 or 5 months, depending on how bad the tear is. Again, it is really, really good that it has a blood supply. It's able to heal on its own, and it's able to return to its 100% before the athlete goes back. But sometimes it takes a lot of time. And specifically in the game of soccer, there are two things that are really important for defenders, and in particular, Cancelo, to be 100% before he goes back. Number one is going to be tackling, because when you do a tackle one-on-one versus an attacker, which he will do as a defender, even though he doesn't defend that much, he's still going to have to defend, and he's still going to have to tackle. And if you are a defender and you can't tackle, you frankly cannot do your job effectively. So whenever you're in a tackling situation and you're tackling with the inside of your foot, you're going to put stress on that medial collateral ligament. And that's exactly how this injury happened in the first place, where Cancelo was going full in 100% for a 50-50 ball, went foot to foot with the ball in between, and that stress from the ball traveled directly up his leg into his knee, and that's where the tissue got damaged. So tackling is going to be absolutely essential for Cancelo to be at 100% before he comes back. And what's even more important, considering Cancelo's style of play, long balls. Anytime you play a long ball with the inside of your foot, or anytime you strike the ball with pretty high forces with the inside of your foot, it's going to stress the MCL. That's just the way the biomechanics of soccer happen in relation to the foot, in relation to the knee, and in relation to rotation of the hip. It's just going to happen that way. So those two things really need to be checked off before Cancelo comes back. And to be honest, his timeline is going to be pretty much determined by how he feels during those actions. Because if he still has pain during those actions, that means those fibers aren't completely healed, which means that his tissue health is not 100%, which means that if he goes in for another 50-50 or another tackle or a really long ball, he's going to have pain, which might result in tissue damage, which might result in a re-injury. It's unfortunate, but those are the things that, play a role in athletes coming back. And this is exactly why not every athlete is going to have the same injury timelines for the same injury, right? Like, let's say I'm a number 10, where, maybe I'm playing more short passes over a shorter period, or a shorter distance, much, much closer, smaller space. And because I'm a 10, I don't have to do 50-50 tackles necessarily as much as a 6 or an 8 or a center back or a fullback. Well, I'm not going to be in those situations. And maybe if I am, I can pull out a little bit, right? For example, Kevin De Bruyne, if he had a MCL injury and he says, Pep Guardiola, I can do everything except tackle. Well, Pep say, okay, then you play. If you have to tackle, then pull out. That's fine, but you can still play. So it's different for everybody. But if it's, let's say, Ederson, it's like, well, you got to do goal kicks, my guy. So long balls are important. But let's say it's on Ederson's weak foot. Well, that's a little bit different. So you guys can start to see how every injury, it's not necessarily what is the injury and what is the timeline for this injury. It's more of what tissue is damaged. How does this tissue damage relate to how I perform on the field? Which actions can I do? Which actions can I do? And how will that relate to me returning to the field as quickly as possible? Let's go ahead and move into, because I think this is very, very interesting. Let's move into injury number 3. Injury number 3 is going to have to deal with Sam Kerr and her most recent ACL injury. I just noticed a mistake on one of my slides. So I'm going to fix that super quick to make sure that everyone is presented properly here. Give me 2 seconds, guys and gals. Sam Kerr, done. Download. All right, so let's get that loaded up. And boom, there we go. Oh, where'd I go? Where did I go? Sorry, guys. First stream. Things happen. What can you say? Transparent background. That's what I want to do. Aha, here we go. Confirm. Let's go. We're back. Okay. Sam Kerr. For those of you who do not know, she is a striker. She is Australian. She plays for Chelsea. She is a fantastic goal scorer, had a phenomenal World Cup, has had a phenomenal career thus far. Take a look at her stats on Transfer Market or Wikipedia if you happen to have the time. But she, again, plays for Chelsea, and Chelsea were out in, I think it was Dubai or some sort of tropical location for their winter training camp. And she tore her ACL during that time. And again, the ACL is a structure within the knee that that allows the knee to be nice and stable. But before we go ahead and analyze her injury, what we are going to do is we're going to read the press release that Chelsea FC have put out regarding her injury, and we'll kind of analyze it from there. So, update on Sam Kerr. Chelsea Football Club can confirm striker Sam Kerr has sustained an ACL injury during our warm weather training camp in Morocco. Sam will be assessed by a specialist in the coming days and then begin her rehabilitation with the club's medical team. The Australia International signed for the Blues in 2019, and wow, what a goal scoring record. 199 goals in 128 matches. She played a pivotal role in 4 Women's Super League title wins, 3 FA Cup triumphs, 2 Women's League Cup victories, and the Women's Community Shield in 2020. Everyone at Chelsea will wish Sam the very best for her recovery. Well, if you guys haven't been following the women's game up to this point, one, you should really follow it. It's very interesting. The style of play from league to league is so different, and it's a spectacular thing to watch at times, to be completely honest. But the amount of ACL injuries that have been happening have been, frankly, concerning for good reason, because it seems like every week there's another top player who tears their ACL, is out for 9 to 12 months. And what's really unfortunate is the fact that there are solutions to these types of injuries. And I'm speaking directly to the women's game and not necessarily the professional one, because chances are, if you're watching the stream, you're more involved in the grassroots level. And that's the population I'm speaking to here. People always ask the question, can you prevent ACL injury? And why does it happen so frequently in the women's game, especially in comparison to the men's game? And there is so much research on this topic already. There is a ton of research on this topic. Let me show you. Let me show you exactly. And when I say research, I don't mean blogs. I don't mean articles. I mean hard scientific medical research. So this is PubMed. This is where, nerds like me go to, learn new things and find articles and things like that. If you look up women's ACL injury soccer, I bet you there's more than 1,000 articles that we'll get results from. Oh, we got 117. Look at all these. What's my risk of sustaining ACL injury while playing football, soccer? Making football safer for women, a systematic review. Knee injury patterns among men and women in collegiate basketball and soccer. ACL injury, differences between males and females. ACL ligament injury in elite football. Examining the dynamic nature of anterior cruciate ligament injury risk factors in women's collegiate soccer. If we take soccer out of it, I'm sure we'll get a ton more. There we go. Over 1,000 articles on this topic. Well, that brings us to the question of, if there's so much research on this topic already, then why do we still have this problem? Why do we still have this problem? And I can tell you, I haven't worked directly in the women's game, but I have worked around soccer for a good bit. What needs to happen is everything that you guys see in articles like this, in research programs like this, there over 1,000, over 117 on just women's ACL injury soccer alone. There are, and guys, these aren't little articles. These are not little articles. Let's open one of these up. A meta-analysis of injury prevention programs in 11,773. If you open things like this up, there's so much information. There's so much good advice. There's so much to be had. Look at all this. Does this look like a topic we need to learn more about? No. So what do we then need to do? Because we don't need more research on this. We really, really don't. What we need to do is start to translate some of this research directly into practice. We need to translate some of this research directly into practice. Well, what do we mean by that? Is the recommendations need to be communicated. I'm first. Let's talk to the different kind of stakeholders that are in this discussion right now. We're going to talk about the physios. We're going to talk about the physios and the fitness staff. We're going to group them together. We're going to talk about the coaching staff, and we're going to talk about the players. And we'll also mention the parents, agents, yada, 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 people who may have an influence on the situation. Because when injuries like this happen, it needs to be addressed from every single possible aspect. So first, let's talk about the fitness and medical staff. These need to be given to coaches, players, and parents. The information that we get, the injury prevention programs that we get, need to be given to players, parents, and coaches in a manner that is digestible, in a manner that is understandable, in a manner where an athlete or a player or a coach or a parent can simply look at it and do it. That part of that is on us. The PDFs aren't enough. Let me send you an email of exercises with a sheet of exercises aren't enough. It needs to be in a method where it is foolproof, it cannot go wrong, and it just needs to happen and go. And then you can look at the coaching staff. Because I've worked with, and right now I'm blessed to work with amazing coaches, but in the past, I've spoken to coaches that aren't very receptive to things like this. They say injury prevention programs are a waste of time. Well, if that is you, you really have to take a hard look at yourself, because when an injury like this happens, you have to be reflective. And you have to think to yourself, did I do everything that is in my power to prevent this from happening? And if a physio or a strength coach gave you nothing at all, or they gave you nothing that is understandable to you, and it looks like medical jargon, then no, you can't necessarily be held accountable. But if it's the opposite, if you know what these programs can do and you make the conscious decision to not help your players, to not guide your team through it, then part of it is on you, not all of it, because again, we don't know everything. We can't say, not doing a warm up, not doing your injury prevention is going to cause this injury, but you have to accept part of the responsibility. In fact, there is a program out there that is proven to reduce ACL injury by what is it, like 30, 40, 50%? Let's Google it real quick. Let's get the number right. Because the program's called FIFA 11 Plus Injury Prevention Rate Reduction. The number is high. The number is high. The FIFA 11 Plus group had 23.6% of the players sustain injury, and the control group had a 40% injury rate. The authors found that the FIFA 11 Plus program reduced lower body injuries by 30%. By 30%. By 30%. That is a lot. That's 30% is a lot. Do you know why that program doesn't work? Because there is a paper on that too. Do you know why that program doesn't work? Because there is a paper on that too that has been studied. The number one reason why programs like that do not work is because the coaching staff does not implement them because they don't find value in it. It's been studied. It's proven. It's proven. That is why. That is why. So after we look at the medical performance staff, did we give the information that is necessary to the necessary stakeholders, being the players, being the parents, being the coaching staff, because that's the most important? Then you can take a look at the player. And then, of course, there are things that players can be held responsible for. Coming on time for team warm-ups, having a good routine, this, that, whatever. But I think the players shouldn't necessarily be the focus of this. It should be the medical staff. It should be the fitness staff. It should be the head coaches. It should be the communication between the two, how that happens, if that happens. And this is different on every level of the game, right? If this happens at a rec club, it's totally different than happening, at a Champions League level club. It's completely different. But I think we're going to have to start. And I know Sam Kerr is kind of being used as an example here, and none of really what I'm saying is in direct kind of correspondence to her case. But the examples are clear. The pattern is there. We need to get these female athletes in the gym. We need to get them stronger. That's the other thing. Do your athletes, and this is a question for your coaches, this is a question for your club administrators. Do your athletes have access to a medical staff, to a performance staff, to a fitness staff? Are they doing these things? Maybe this should be the questions you are asking from club to club when you're picking which environment is right for you. This is important. It's the pattern is there. And I always see the tweets of, we need more research. No, we don't need more research. We have hundreds, thousands of articles that are telling us exactly what to do. And we have proof that says this is why it doesn't work. There is proof that says, if you do this, this will happen. If you do this, that will happen. And this doesn't happen because of this. It's all outlined. We just need to go and do it. We need to go and do it. I think I've touched on ACLs enough. I was going to talk about how to avoid ACL injury. You know what? I am going to talk about ACL injury prevention. How do you exactly avoid it? How do you avoid it? And with this whole situation, what you need to realize is what is in your control and what is not in your control. What is in your locus of control? What can you take control of? And what is completely out of control? I'll give you an example. Whether or not you are mentally engaged, if you're a player, whether or not you are mentally engaged and focused during your warm-up, remember the warm-up that can prevent injury by 30%, that is up to you. That is up to you. What you cannot control is you playing on a team and they have 3 games in 4 days. That's not great for risk reduction either, but that's not in your control. Um, in particular, things that are in control are the following. 1, your warm up. Doing a warm up is in your control. If your team doesn't do a warm up, you can do it at home before you leave. You can go arrive at the pitch early, do it there. It's totally in your control. You can do a warm up. You can Google one, you can YouTube one, you can follow my Instagram for one. They are everywhere. You can find a warm up, you do it. That is in your control. Gym programming. Gym programming. If you look up the FIFA 11 Plus, there is a whole section for strength, a whole section for strength, and it works. It works. It's simple. It's basic. It requires zero equipment. You do it at home. You can do it on the field. You can do it. It's there. If your team has a gym program that you do together, maybe you play for a high school or a college, are you half-assing your workout? Are you half-assing your workout? Are you mentally engaged? Did you even go to the workout? Did you even go? That's a valid question. I know people who skip workouts all the time. It's your body, it's your career. If that is available to you, then you should be going. You should be taking advantage of that. And if it's not available to you, again, you can look up a program and do it on your own. FIFA 11 Plus, body weight exercises, 6 of them. It'll take you 20 minutes. Done. The things that are outside of your control when preventing ACL injury, again, they're out of your control, but what you can do is you can start to ask some questions. And if I was an athlete that was concerned about ACL injury, I would ask a few questions. If my team doesn't do dynamic warm-ups, if we simply jog a few laps and go out and play after, I would ask the question to my coach, why don't we do dynamic warm-ups as a team? Why don't we do dynamic warm-ups as a team? It's a valid question. Completely valid. Why don't you ask this question? Why doesn't our club have access to a fitness coach? Why doesn't our club have access to a fitness coach or physio or just somebody who, kind of specializes in that area of expertise? Why don't we have access to them? This question is doubly valid if your club is in a pay-to-play model, because that means there's money flowing everywhere. We got money for trips. We got money to play 3 games in 4 days. We got money to take a bus down to Georgia. We got money for this. We got money for that. We have the newest gear. We still have last year's gear. We have so much gear. We have money for 4 refs. We have money for this, money for. Why don't we have access to something that can prevent an injury from happening that will take out an entire year of athlete participation? These are valid questions you need to ask, because the number one ability is availability. If you're not available, you can't play. Your gear is useless. Your travel is useless. Your hotel's useless. Your tournament's useless. Your showcase is useless if you can't play. And if you have an ACL injury, your season's done. 9 to 12 months. Another question to ask, and this is where things start to get a little edgy, is let's say, you have a tournament showcase weekend, 3 games, 4 days, 4 games, 5 days, 5 games, 6 days, 3 games, 1 day, 4 games, 2 days. It happens. Yes, it happens. For those of you listening from overseas, this is America, and we tend to do things like, let's play 3 games in 1 day, and let's wonder why we get injured. We need to ask our environment the question of, what is our plan to manage player workload? Are we going to? Is that even in the cards? That's a valid question to ask, I think, especially in your environment. If you're in an environment where these injuries happen frequently, it's totally valid. I would start to ask these questions. I really, really would. But I need everyone to know that you can reduce anybody. Share this with a friend. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. You can reduce your risk of ACL injury dramatically by doing a proper warm-up, by having a strength and conditioning program. In fact, let me share this with you guys right now. Let me share this with you guys right now. Let me share this to you because this has, guys, when I tell you we don't need more research, we don't. We don't. Because a lot of really smart people have broken down exactly what you need to do to reduce your risk of ACL injury. They've broken it down to a science, a complete science. So what I'm going to do is share with you guys right now exactly what those recommendations were. So let me go ahead and put this on your screen right now. And I'm going to have to shift over this way. And boom. Oh, damn it. I got rid of myself again. Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. There we go. We're downloading the right file now. Sorry about this, guys. I thought I had my whole situation situated. Turns out, first time doing anything tends to be a little bit of a mess. But I hope you guys are enjoying the stream. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And there we go. So, how do you reduce your risk of ACL injury? A lot of it we've covered on the stream thus far. One, general warm-up. If you're not doing it, do it. It's free. 2, general strength training. Get in the gym. If you don't have a program, look up FIFA 11 Plus. You can do it at home, after training, wherever you want, whenever you want. Zero equipment reduces lower body injury risk by 30%. Do it. Plyometric training. Hopping, jumping, landing. Super important. Knowing how to land. ACLs tear during landing and hyperextension and rotation. You have to learn how to land effectively if you want to reduce your risk of ACL injury. It has to happen. It's in the FIFA 11 Plus. If you do that program, it's included. Single leg strength. So not only working out in the gym with both legs together, like a goblet squat, trap bar, front squat, overhead squat, back squat. Train one leg at a time. Forward lunge, side lunge, reverse lunge, rear foot elevated, split squats. If you do the FIFA 11 Plus, it's included. Single leg balance, balancing on one leg, balancing with your eyes closed, balancing while catching an object, balancing while someone's pushing you around, balancing while landing. You see how those two go together? Guess what? If you do the FIFA 11 Plus, it's included. Do the FIFA 11 Plus. It's important to know that balance on its own is not a sole prevention strategy. If you just do the balance portion of it, it's not effective. Why? Because you're not working on strength. You're not working on your warm-up. You're not working on single leg strength. Muscle activation. Getting a little activation going before your training or your matches. If you do the FIFA 11 Plus, it's included. Injury prevention during preseason. During preseason, I am looking at you, NCAA athletes, with an 11-day preseason. That is not enough. That is not enough. And I can guarantee you, your main focus during preseason is imbalance. It's not plyometrics. It's not strength. It's frankly survival. So what you need to do is start all of this. I don't even want to use the term preseason. I actually disagree with that. I would say off-season. Off-season and preseason. Working on balance, working on reaction, working on single leg strength, all of that during the off season. Make sure that is your standard so you can continue that going into the preseason. That's what needs to happen. During the season, 20 plus minutes of injury prevention 2 to 3 times a week. What does that look like? Balance, and pretty much everything on this list. strength training, plyometric training, single leg strength, single leg balance. All of that needs to happen during the season, 2 to 3 times a week for 20 to 30 minutes, not 2 to 3, not 2 to 3 minutes, 20 to 30. That's what's necessary. This entire list was taken off this document you see right there. What does it say? Exercise-based knee and anterior cruciate ligament injury prevention. The people who wrote this document are some of the smartest in the world. That's like an ACL supergroup. If you want to look it up, go ahead, feel free. But they're extremely smart. They know what they're doing. They're the people who wrote everything. They need to be listened to. They give a lot of good recommendations, and a lot of them are being ignored. It needs to happen. It needs to happen at the youth level, the women's level, the men's level, the amateur level, semi-pro level, professional level, all levels of the game. It needs to happen. It needs to happen. Whew. All right, let's get into some questions. If you guys had questions, I'm going to answer them right now. There's a few questions that, oh, wow, quite a few people have been joining on Instagram. I did get a question from one of my friends out in New York that I do want to answer first because I think it's a very, very valid question. He says, hey, Andy, what are your thoughts on all these 15-year-olds playing pro soccer against 21 to 35-year-olds? Is this a good for their bodies, or will they be all burned out and their bodies destroyed by age 23? Well, the first thing is you have to know exactly what is commonplace in our game of football. We move into the pros relatively quickly, and that's just the reality of the situation. And is we talked about early in the stream, locus of control, what is in your control and what is outside of our control. And frankly, teenagers going pro is not inside the control of medical or fitness staff, really. And it's common in the game because frankly, if you're good enough, you're old enough. And this is where it helps to look at things objectively. Because why do we assume that a 15-year-old, let's say you have a player who's a U16 player, so they're 15 years old. Why do we assume that that player has less demands than a player who's already playing at the professional level? Why do we assume that? I can guarantee you there are weeks where a 15-year-old has a higher demand in terms of match minutes, in terms of sprinting distance, in terms of high-speed running distance, in terms of accelerations, decelerations, than a pro. Because you look at these showcases and you have 3, 4, 5 games in a week. You look at some of the pros and there's only 11 players that start. There's only, 16, 17 players that'll play. There's a whole bunch of players that won't play that are stuck on the bench. So it's not necessarily, I wouldn't look at the age. What I would look at are the objective markers. How many days a week are they training? How long are they training for? How intense are these training sessions? How many games a week are they playing for? What position are they in? What is their injury history? Do they have an injury history? Because a lot of 15-year-olds that go pro don't necessarily have an extensive injury history. What are the demands on them on the team that they're currently playing for? It's all subjective. It all needs to be looked at situationally. Me, frankly, I'm not too concerned about it because if you look at it from a perspective of a front office, right? A lot of the times these younger players are what brings the club a lot of value because in either situation, you have a player who stays at a club and goes on to have a hopefully illustrious career there, who contributes a lot, or you have a player that gets sold on for a profit to another club. That's generally what happens with young players. You stay at your club, or you get sold on to another club. And in either situation, it's within the club's best interest to take care of that player. So my default answer is generally they will be taken care of because we all know that they have a lot of value and that's what should be happening with those players. So I'm not too concerned about that at all because if you're playing, you're playing. If you're playing 15 rec, 15 elite youth, 15 as a pro, 15 in Europe. You're playing football. There's risk everywhere. There really is. And you can't objectively say that it's dangerous for this, that, and whatever just because of their age. Let's go ahead and go through the questions here. Y Cardona says, big fan. Appreciate the love, my guy. Appreciate you. CTF on Instagram says, my friend's ATFL tear is still swollen after a little over a month. PT said slow jogging is okay. Why do you think swelling is still there? This is a soccer injury BTW, Maradona spin with bad landing. Oof. Well, I hope he comes back to the point where he has enough confidence to try Maradona. It depends how bad the tear is, and it depends on and there's a lot of different perspectives when it comes to rehab. Depending on the PT, depending on who's doing the rehab, depending on their treatment philosophy and style, you can do rehab in a painful. Rehab doesn't have to be pain-free. It does not have to be pain-free. The way I tend to generally approach injuries is I like to minimize pain as much as possible. In terms of an ankle sprain, I would like that ankle to be relatively pain-free, if not completely pain-free, throughout the treatment program. But that being said, I treat injuries over a longer period of time. I'm a relatively conservative therapist, and my injuries take a little bit longer to heal because of that. Why do I think the swelling's still there? Well, one of two things. Either you're still in an acute phase of injury where the tissue is not completely healed, meaning that ligament, the ATFL, that's generally like this, with the two ends together, has become separated a little bit, and it hasn't completely healed completely back together yet. There's still a gap. And when there's a gap, every time you overstretch it, those fibers tear a little bit. And when that happens, the body thinks something is wrong, and it causes pain in the area, and it causes inflammation and swelling. If that happens over a significant amount of time repeatedly, what can happen is your body can start to interpret that as a chronic response. And the pain can linger for a while. The swelling might kind of just sit there. And that to me isn't a great situation to be in, but it's not an uncommon state. It's not uncommon. So depending on how long this injury has been going on for, how long this rehab has been going on for, it can kind of impact the interpretation on the situation. Inclusive internet property says my doctor immediately wanted me to have surgery. I'm guessing that's what we were talking about ACLs back then. Generally you will need ACL surgery. You will, if you want to return to soccer. It's, from my experience, it's almost essential in order for that to happen. It looks like that's all the questions we really have here. Guys, I want to say thank you so much for joining the stream, for following along with me. We are at we're at almost an hour streaming here. So thank you so much for your support, for your guidance. Be sure to send me your questions. I will answer them. My next stream is going to be on Sunday, probably Sunday evening around 7, 8 o'clock. Again, I'll put out the reminder on Instagram and Twitter, and we are live on YouTube and Instagram. Be sure to follow me on both. Peace and love, and I'll see you all next time.